Iran and its proxies have been involved in a series of attacks on oil facilities and vessels in the Middle East, posing a serious threat to the global oil market. These attacks have been motivated by Iran's desire to exert pressure on its regional rivals and the US, as well as to retaliate for the sanctions imposed on its nuclear program. One of the most significant attacks was the drone missile strike on the Saudi Aramco oil facility in Abqaiq and Kuris in September 2019, which temporarily cut Saudi Arabia's oil production by half and disrupted about 5% of the world's oil supply. The US and Saudi Arabia blamed Iran for the attack, which was claimed by the Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen. Iran denied any involvement, but experts said the attack showed a high level of sophistication and coordination that was beyond the capabilities of the Houthis. Another example of Iran's interference with oil shipping was the seizure of 2 oil tankers in May 2023 by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, IRGCN, in the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway that connects the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. The U.S. Navy released a video showing a dozen Iranian fast attack boats swarming and boarding the Panama-flagged oil tanker Niovi, which was on its way from Dubai to Fujairah. The IRGCN also seized the Marshall Islands flagged oil tanker Advantage Sweet in the Gulf of Oman a week earlier. The U.S. Navy said Iran had unlawfully seized at least 5 commercial ships in the past 2 years, violating international law and disrupting regional security and stability. These attacks have significant implications for the global oil market, as they could disrupt the supply and raise the prices of oil. The Middle East accounts for about 40% of the world's oil production and 60% of its exports. The Strait of Hormuz alone is a vital choke point for about 20% of the world's oil trade. Any disruption or closure of this passage could cause a major spike in oil prices and affect the economies of oil-importing countries. Moreover, these attacks could escalate the tensions between Iran and its adversaries, such as Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the US, and increase the risk of a wider conflict in the region that could further destabilize the oil market. The Iranian Revolution of 1979 was a major turning point in the history of the Middle East and the world. It also had a profound impact on the global oil market, triggering a second oil shock that disrupted the economies of many countries. The revolution began in early 1978 as a popular uprising against the authoritarian rule of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who was seen as a puppet of the United States and other Western powers. The Shah had pursued a modernization program that alienated many religious and traditional groups, and had suppressed political dissent and human rights. The opposition was led by Ayatollah Khomeini, a charismatic cleric who advocated an Islamic republic based on Sharia law. As the protests intensified, the Shah's regime lost control of the situation and faced widespread strikes, demonstrations, and violence. One of the sectors that was most affected by the unrest was the oil industry, which was the main source of income and foreign exchange for Iran. Iran was one of the largest oil producers and exporters in the world, and a founding member of OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. The oil workers went on strike in November 1978, reducing Iran's oil production from 6 million barrels per day to about 1.5 million barrels per day. This caused a significant drop in the global oil supply, which was already tight due to high demand from a booming world economy. The oil markets reacted by raising the price of crude oil drastically over the next 12 months, more than doubling it to $39.50 per barrel. The higher oil prices had serious consequences for many countries, especially those that depended on imported oil for their energy needs. The United States and other Western nations faced gasoline shortages, price controls, and panic buying at gas stations, similar to what had happened during the first oil crisis of 1973–74. The higher energy costs also increased inflation and unemployment, and reduced economic growth. The situation worsened in 1980, when Iraq invaded Iran and started a bloody war that lasted for 8 years. The war further reduced Iran's oil output and threatened other oil-producing countries in the region. The world faced another oil shock that pushed prices even higher and triggered economic recessions worldwide. The Iranian Revolution of 1979 showed how political events in one country could affect the global oil market and have far-reaching effects on other countries. It also marked a shift in the balance of power in the Middle East and the world, as Iran emerged as a new force that challenged the status quo and the interests of the West. One of the factors that could reduce the impact of a hostage situation in the Middle East on the global oil market is the increased domestic production of oil in the United States and other countries. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, EIA, the United States produced an average of 11.9 million barrels of oil per day in 2022, making it the world's largest oil producer. This was a result of the shale boom that began in the late 2000s, which enabled the extraction of oil from unconventional sources using hydraulic fracturing and horizontal drilling technologies. The EIA projects that the U.S. oil production will reach a new record of 12.4 million barrels per day in 2023, which would further enhance its energy security and reduce its reliance on oil imports. Contrary to popular belief, the United States has never really been dependent on the Middle East for its supply of oil. Today, only 9% of the U.S. oil supply comes from the region, and at no point in history did that figure surpass 15%. The U.S. imports more oil from Canada, Mexico, and other countries than from the Middle East. Moreover, the U.S. oil consumption has been declining since 2005 due to improved fuel efficiency standards, increased use of biofuels and natural gas, and changing consumer preferences. These trends have reduced the U.S. vulnerability to oil price shocks and supply disruptions. The United States is not alone in increasing its domestic oil production and reducing its dependence on Middle Eastern oil. Other major oil producers, such as Canada, Brazil, Norway, and Guyana, have also expanded their output in recent years by developing their offshore and unconventional resources. These countries have diversified their export markets and increased their share of global oil supply. Furthermore, some countries that used to be net importers of oil, such as Argentina and Australia, have become net exporters thanks to their shale and liquefied natural gas, LNG, industries. These developments have contributed to a more balanced and resilient global oil market. In conclusion, the hostage situation in the Middle East could have a limited impact on the global oil market because of the increased domestic production and reduced dependence on Middle Eastern oil by the United States and other countries. These countries have improved their energy security and reduced their exposure to geopolitical risks by exploiting their own resources and diversifying their sources of supply. However, this does not mean that the Middle East is irrelevant for the global oil market. The region still holds about half of the world's proven oil reserves and accounts for about a third of the world's oil production. Any major disruption or conflict in the region could still affect the global oil prices and supply, especially for countries that rely heavily on Middle Eastern oil, such as China, India, Japan, and South Korea, 10. Therefore, maintaining stability and cooperation in the region remains a vital interest for both oil producers and consumers.